turning 40? Like, it makes you analyze like where you're at in your life.
What does it feel like to be 42?
Exhausting.
Just can't remember why you feel so sore.
30s and 40s are hard work and raising children and working and moving ahead in your career. And
if you're 40 or over, don't let your age stop you from getting in the best shape of your life. In today's episode, we're going to talk about all the factors that they can contribute to those of you over the age of 40 to improve your fitness and your health. First thing I want to do is open up with that. There was a study that I had talked about maybe a month ago on the podcast where they looked at people over the age of 70. So now we're talking, would be considered advanced age. People over the age of 70 and the amount of muscle and strength that they built with very minimal strength training. And it was significant. I remember what the numbers were, but it was way more than what most people would anticipate. Now, I've a lot of experience with this. I used to train a lot of people in advanced age, and most of our clients were over 40. I'd say the average personal training client is typically over 40.
Those are the best clients.
Really. And they all got significant results. And I remember that question would always pop up. They would always say, am I too old for this? Is my body still going to respond? And yeah, your body never loses the ability to adapt. There may be like a limit to your ultimate potential as you get older, but the ability to adapt to exercise when it's applied appropriately, like that doesn't go away until you pass away. Your body can still build muscle, build strength, get leaner, improve its fitness, its endurance, and all that stuff.
I have a similar experience. I actually thought too, like I didn't want to like over promote it because I had a client that was like over 70, he was like 75 and was asking me the same thing. Well, how much can I really expect, in terms of like, can I still build muscle? I'm like, I really like, I didn't know, but I'm like, oh, sure. Yeah, you can build muscle. I'm like, I don't know. And it would surprise me. It was actually pretty crazy. It was like, at least 10 pounds of lean muscle that over a course of like, year or two that we worked together. And it was like, just, I don't know. I guess I was just like in that thought process. Once you get older, like a lot of things sort of down regulate. And like that was like a signal that was going to be really hard to achieve growth.
Well, we've actually talked about this several times. And I was thinking about it right now when you guys were talking. I'm like, most of my clients that I trained over 40, if not all, I got in the best shape of their life.
Yeah.
Because I didn't really train very many people who were like ex-bodybuilders or people who got in phenomenal shape in their 20s and 30s, and then they wanted me to get them back in that phenomenal shape.
These are a lot of everyday people.
Yeah, most people I got were just everyday people. They had normal lives. If they were active or had activity in their life at all, it was when they were much younger. It was normally playing a sport or some leisurely activity that they did. Maybe they skied or snowboarded or did something like that for years, and then they didn't do it anymore. I didn't have a lot of people that understood how to build muscle, how to burn body fat, how to sculpt a physique. And so I'd say no matter how old my client was, we probably were in the best shape of their lives when they were with me, even at 50, 60, 70 years old.
Yeah, I think the reason why there's that belief is that we're reading the signals that we see in everyday life wrong, right? So you see the average 45-year-old, 55-year-old, 65-year-old, and what you see is someone who is now more likely to be overweight, less likely to have good mobility, not going to be as strong. You tend to see this in the everyday world in comparison to a 25 or a 35-year-old, right? And so what you think is, oh man, when you get older, like it just goes downhill real fast. The truth is that's not really a good or accurate representation. What you want to look at is what does a fit and healthy person at that age look and move like versus the average. And what you actually see is if we were to graph this out and you were to compare fit and healthy versus sedentary and eat whatever you want, that graph, as people get older, starts to really diverge. It starts to really separate. In other words, a 20-year-old that works out is definitely more fit and healthy than the typical 20-year-old that doesn't, right? But it's not a huge difference. When they get to 30, that gap grows. When it gets to 40, the gap grows even more. And the gap just continues to grow between somebody who exercises appropriately and eats good in a healthy way versus their peers. So the truth is the potential, now your ultimate max potential may change, right? You might not be able to, lift as much weight as you could have at 25 doing everything perfect when you're 55. But the truth is, in comparison to where you would be if you didn't do those things, is massive. it's a huge chasm. The difference between fit and unfit and healthy and unhealthy as you get older gets so big. It's incredible.
I also think that the rules really don't change. They just become more important. So like when you're in your 20s, you can get away with somewhat of a crappy diet. You can get away with poor sleep a lot of times. You can get away with a lot of things and still see these results that people think. And so I think that that's part of the misconception is that the things that maybe you did when you were 20 that kept you in okay or good shape no longer apply because you're older. And so then we default to like, oh, it's because I'm older. Well, not necessarily.
You just got away with more.
Yeah, when you were younger, you weren't approaching it the best way either. It's just you were more resilient, and so you could get away with doing things less optimally and still see some sort of results.
Totally.
Whereas I think when we get older, you have to have some things more and different things take more of a priority, and you have to have a much better balance of understanding stress with nutrition, with all those things matter even more so than they did when you were in your 20s.
Yeah, I think there's a few factors at play here. One of them is age. Although age doesn't play as big of a role as people think, at least not until people start to hit late 50s, early 60s. That's where you start to see age play a bigger role. But what you have really is cumulative stress. That's a big one, right? You take your typical 45-year-old and you compare them to your typical 25-year-old. And a 45-year-old has more cumulative stress. They probably have a job. They have to support a family. They have kids. They have a mortgage. Whereas a 25-year-old doesn't necessarily have those people depending on them and have those types of responsibilities.
These behavioral patterns you've established, over decades are much more ingrained. They're much more hardwired into your method of operation versus like somebody a bit younger too, that's like sort of still kind of developing these behaviors and these patterns and things, could maybe be a little bit more flexible and adjust. It does take a lot more intentional, purposeful type of structure and programming to be able to get the results you got when you're younger, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, and that's the first point, right? And probably the one you got away the most with when you're younger, which was like lifting weights appropriately. I think when you're in your 20s, you can get away with these 7-day-a-week and hammering the body, poor sleep. Where I think when we get to advanced age, or you get 40 plus, having the appropriate balance, and that took me a while to transition it and fix that, because I had this kind of addictive behaviors around training inside the gym from my 20s that I didn't realize, like, what little stimulus I needed to have in the gym in order to produce, more muscle on my body or to stay healthy. It's really not as crazy as you think it is.